I was 12 years old, and my mom had just begun trusting me enough to leave me home alone. We lived in a peaceful, serene town where everyone knew each other. It wasn't a place where you'd have to look over your shoulder at night if you were walking alone. That's why my parents felt comfortable leaving me by myself. They gave me some money to order a pizza for dinner, and I thought it was the perfect night for a kid. The house to myself, video games all night, and pizza. I was obsessed with James Bond video games, so I immediately started playing Nightfire on my PS2. After I finished the game for the third time, I decided to order the pizza. Right by our house was a pizzeria called Gianni's, a family favorite. I ordered a regular cheese pie, and while I waited, I put in another game, Agent Under Fire. When the doorbell finally rang, I hurried downstairs with the $20 bill my parents had left me. My mom had told me to tip $4, which was pretty generous considering the place was only 3 blocks away. The delivery driver was a 30-something guy with a long, unkempt beard, glasses, and a black trucker's hat. He handed me the box, and as he counted the change, he looked up at me, then passed me into the house and asked, "You alone here?" I immediately felt an odd creepiness. My parents had taught me to be wary of strangers. I stupidly replied that they were on their way home. In hindsight, I should have just said no. He must have known I was alone because there were no cars in the driveway and a kid was answering the door instead of an adult. After he gave me the change, I closed the door. I ate 3 slices and wrapped up the rest, putting them in the fridge. I then went back upstairs to play Agent Under Fire. Hours went by, and it was probably around 11 when the doorbell rang again. Thinking it was my parents, I rushed downstairs to the door. I said, "Mom, Dad?" But an unfamiliar voice on the other side said, "Hey, I need help. I need to use a phone." I asked who it was, and he just repeated that he needed a phone. I didn't want to peek through the window because I was scared. I decided to go back upstairs and ignore him, as common sense told me that opening the door would be a terrible, terrible idea. As I was walking up the stairs, which are directly in front of the front door, he started banging on the door and I heard him say, "Wait, please, I need help." This meant he had seen me. He was watching through the glass at the top of the door. I turned around, and even though it was dark on the porch, I could still see the outline of his head. I couldn't see his eyes, but it was obvious he was staring at me. I ran upstairs and went to my parents' room where the only house phone was. I immediately called my mom's cell phone number. When my mom picked up the phone, I told her there was someone at the door asking to come in. This comment likely sobered her up instantly because her voice grew much louder and more concerned. She asked me a few questions, the first being if I had answered the man or made him aware that I was home. I honestly told her that I had. She then asked if anyone had known I was there by myself. I immediately thought of the pizza guy. As I was telling her about him, the doorbell rang 2 more times. I told my mom in a panic that the guy would not leave, and she told me to stay put in their room and lock the door. She said they were calling the police. They had to leave the restaurant to go outside and better communicate with the police on my dad's phone. It was a summer night and all the windows were cracked open to let some air into the house. Through my parents' window, I heard the gate on the side of the house leading to the backyard open. It opened in a very discreet, gentle way. I told this to my mom, and she kept telling me to stay quiet, stay in their room, and keep the lights off. I whispered into the phone, "What if he tries getting in through the window?" She just told me to stop talking and wait for the police, continuing to give me updates on their ETA. I was just starting to calm down a bit when I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps downstairs. Footsteps of someone inside the house wandering around. I whispered this to my mom in a panic, and I heard her scream something to the police, probably along the lines of, "The man is inside the house, hurry up!" My mom told me to hide under the bed and wait there. For my 12-year-old self, it was the most horrific, unreal moment of my life. The only thing that made me feel remotely safe was the tiny lock on my parents' bedroom door. I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. They faded for a moment as the intruder was likely searching my sister's room, but then I heard them again, coming down the hall. The footsteps stopped at the bedroom door, and I heard him try to press down the doorknob. He tried a few times as if that would magically unlock the door. Then there was a light knocking on the door, but the person on the other side didn't say a word. He tried the doorknob one more time before I heard the footsteps walk back down the hall, then down the stairs, fading away deeper into the house. I did my best not to burst into tears. I didn't even whisper into the phone because I was too scared to make the slightest sound. My mom finally told me the police were there, but to still stay put. I was expecting to hear them kick down the door, but instead I heard multiple heavy footsteps and a man shouting my name, identifying himself as a police officer. I heard them coming up the stairs, and my mom gave me permission to answer them and unlock the door. There were 2 officers upstairs when I opened the door, and 2 more were downstairs. They didn't have to kick down the front door because the back door was left completely ajar. The back sliding window was also slid completely open, which was the obvious original entry point. I had to talk with the police and tell them everything that happened, including my suspicion of the pizza guy. My parents were on the phone, on their way home, and by the time they got back, there were only 2 police officers at the house. The next night, my parents took me to Gianni's Pizzeria and asked me to point out the guy. When I didn't see him, they asked the manager which employee matched my description. He said that would be Phil, who was currently out on a delivery. After we explained the whole scenario, he said there was no way that would be Phil and asked us to leave. My parents made a big scene and said they would never give them their business again. We waited in the parking lot for almost an hour, but he never showed up. My parents thought it was because the manager had warned him, but who knows? Ultimately, we never got any answers, and I still believe it was the pizza guy.
When I was a teenager, my parents and I moved from California to a secluded area in North Idaho. They had just retired and built their dream home deep in the backcountry. We had no neighbors in sight, just an endless, dense forest that backed right up to a national park. The house was massive, 2 stories with a gym, a bar, a pool room, and a legitimate movie theater set up in the basement. It felt like the kind of remote, quiet, and perfect house people dream of, or so it seemed. One night, while my parents were out, I invited my girlfriend over to hang out and watch a movie. We were completely alone. I cracked open a beer, even though I was underage, and we headed down to the movie room to watch Gladiator. Everything started out normally, but somewhere around the midpoint of the movie, maybe close to midnight, something switched in me. I was suddenly overwhelmed with a flight or fight feeling. My body sensed something my brain couldn't see. My heart was pounding, and I kept glancing at the uncovered windows behind us that looked out into the pitch-black woods. I didn't want to freak out my girlfriend, so I kept it to myself. Despite that, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. After the movie ended, I walked her upstairs and out to her car. The house was dead quiet again. She drove off, and I turned to go back inside when I remembered I'd left the lights on in the bar, pool room, and movie room. I went back downstairs. I turned off the lights in the movie room first and then paused. My eyes drifted to the large window that looked into the backyard, and that's when I saw him. He looked homeless, with wild hair and filthy clothes, but what froze me in place was his expression. He had the biggest, creepiest smile I'd ever seen, and in his hand was a knife. He was gently tapping it on the glass over and over. At first I thought I was hallucinating. I slowly backed away and went to the bar room to shut off the rest of the lights. That room has a sliding glass door that also faces the woods. I flipped the switch and watched in horror as the man calmly walked from the window to the door, still smiling and still staring at me. At this point, we were less than a foot apart, with just the glass between us. He didn't try to get in. He just stood there and watched me. I went upstairs without a word. Just then, my parents were walking through the door. I told them, "I think I need to go to the psych ward or something. I swear I just saw a guy with a knife watching me outside." My mom went pale. My dad's eyes narrowed, and without a word, he went to the gun safe, grabbed his rifle, and stormed out to check the property. I asked my mom what was going on, and she said, "There have been a few break-ins in the area. A guy wandering through the woods trying to get into homes. The description you gave matches exactly. The police were called, but they didn't find anything. No signs of entry, no footprints, just cold black woods. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't." That night, as I tried to sleep, I could hear a light tapping sound beneath me. My bedroom was on the second floor, directly above the movie room. It sounded like metal gently tapping glass. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but the tapping lasted for hours. This happened night after night for weeks. Sometimes it would stop, sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and hear it faintly again. Winter came, and my parents had to go out of town for a few days. Before they left, they gave me a shotgun just in case. We also had a big Rottweiler. One night while I was home alone, I heard slow, heavy footsteps crunching in the snow outside. The dog stood up, ears perked, and began growling low and deep at the front door, then barking furiously. He only ever did that when he saw something real. I stayed silent and didn't move. Then came the knock, slow, hollow, and taunting. I didn't answer. That night, I slept with the shotgun next to me, door locked, blinds drawn, and the dog at my feet. The next morning, I went outside and saw something that made my stomach drop. Fresh, human footprints circling the entire house. They stopped at every single window, like someone was trying to look in, searching for me. I followed the prints, and they eventually led into the forest. I followed them for maybe half a mile before they started to zigzag and loop back, as if whoever made them was trying to throw me off their trail. I turned back. Something told me it was a bad idea to keep going. That night, the tapping came back, louder this time. I knew it was him. I unlocked my door, grabbed my shotgun, and stepped onto the second-story deck. I flipped on the fog lights that illuminated the backyard. There he was. The same man, the same smile, and the same dead eyes. He was holding the knife again, staring directly at me like he could see right through me. I raised the shotgun and shouted, "If you don't leave, I'll put one right through you." He didn't move or flinch, just stared, unblinking and grinning. I fired a warning shot into the air, and I finally got a reaction. He staggered a bit, then slowly backed into the woods, still facing me. That's when I decided to unleash the dog. I sprinted downstairs, threw open the sliding door, and let him loose. He bolted into the forest like a black missile, barking and snarling. I'd never seen him that aggressive. I like to think he chased that guy off for good, because after that night, I never saw him again.
This happened in March of 2022, during spring break. I was in my second year of college, and my friends and I, 6 of us in total, decided to rent a cabin out in South Carolina for a few days. It was supposed to be one of those quiet trips where you drink too much, play music too loud, and just have a good time. There were 4 of us guys, me, Matt, Chris, and Tyler, and 2 girls, Jess and Sarah. We'd all been close since freshman year. The cabin we picked was surprisingly cheap for its size. 2 stories, a wraparound porch, 2 bathrooms, and listed as being on private land near a lake. It was way out there. No towns for miles, surrounded by forest. The guy who owned it had a thick accent and seemed kind of off when we talked to him on the phone. He said, "Just don't go wandering too deep into the woods. Some old wells, busted fences, snakes. You don't want to get turned around." We laughed about it, thinking he was just trying to add some spooky southern charm to the trip. But when we got there, it wasn't funny. The drive took forever, and the GPS gave out an hour before we arrived. The last part of the road was just dirt and gravel, barely wide enough for 1 car. The trees got thicker the closer we got. When we finally saw the cabin, we all kind of went quiet. It didn't look like the pictures. It was older and dirtier. The windows were dusty, and a few of the shutters were hanging off their hinges. There was a faint smell outside, like old garbage and wet wood. We brushed it off and made jokes, saying it just added character. We unloaded, claimed rooms, and by 7 p.m., we were drinking. The first night was fun. We grilled outside, cranked music from a Bluetooth speaker, and played some card games. By 11, it got cold, so we moved inside. That's when I noticed how dark the woods were. I don't mean just nighttime dark. I mean complete blackness. The porch lights barely lit up more than a few feet, and the trees were so dense it felt like they were pressing in from all sides. No bugs, no wind, just total heavy silence. We ended up crashing around 2 a.m. I had one of the rooms on the ground floor, right next to the kitchen. It was small, just a bed and a window facing the woods. At around 4:15 a.m., I woke up for no reason, just wide awake like someone had poked me. I laid there for a second, heart beating fast. Then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. I thought it was the heater at first, but then it repeated. Steady, non-metallic, non-mechanical. It sounded like fingers. I looked at the window, and there was a man standing there. He was pressed up against the glass, face almost touching it. He had pale skin, wild hair, and no shirt. He was just staring in. His mouth hung slightly open like he was breathing through it. His eyes were wide. He didn't blink. He didn't move. He just stood there and tapped, soft and slow, like he was trying to tease me. I felt like my body locked up. Then the tapping got a little faster. I whispered for Matt, who was sleeping on the couch in the living room. I said his name again, louder. He woke up, groggy, and asked what I wanted. I just pointed. He looked over, saw the man, and immediately jumped up, knocking over the coffee table. That must have scared the guy off because by the time Matt turned the porch light on and ran outside, he was gone. We all got up. The girls were terrified. Tyler tried to convince everyone it was just some drunk local messing with us, and Chris said maybe it was a hunter who got lost. But I knew it was that guy watching me. He wasn't lost. We blocked the doors, moved the couch in front of the big living room window, and took turns staying awake for a few hours. Nothing else happened that night. The next morning, we went outside. There were footprints. Fresh, bare human footprints circling the entire cabin. They stopped at every single window, even the little one above the upstairs shower. That should have been it. We should have left. But we didn't. We were dumb and stubborn, and we stayed. Night 2 started the same. Drinks, music, fire pit, but the energy was different. Everyone kept glancing at the woods. Jess didn't drink, and Chris kept his hunting knife on his belt. When we finally went inside, we locked every window and double-checked the doors. Around 3:30 a.m., Matt went to the kitchen for water. He stopped in the hallway and called my name. I got up and saw him standing there, pointing. There was someone in the kitchen. The man from before, but this time he was inside. Naked, his back was to us, covered in long, raw-looking scratches. He was standing in front of the fridge, staring at it like he didn't know what it was. He made this slow, swaying motion, like he was rocking on his feet. Matt didn't speak. He just backed up. We all gathered silently at the hallway entrance. I had a pocket knife, Sarah had the fire poker, and Chris grabbed one of the chair legs he had snapped earlier. We turned on the light. The man was gone. The back door was wide open, but it wasn't broken. It wasn't forced. It was just open. We left 20 minutes later. No one argued. We packed only the basics, wallets, keys, phones, and drove through the woods until we had enough signal to call the sheriff. When we met the deputy at a diner off the highway, he didn't look surprised at all. He asked if anyone was hurt, then said,
Yeah, we've had some trouble with folks squatting up in those woods, not always right in the head. We tried to explain it wasn't just some homeless guy. This man watched us, came back 2 nights in a row, and had a key or somehow got inside. The deputy just nodded like he'd heard it before. When we mentioned the owner, his face almost implied that he knew the guy. The listing disappeared a few days later, completely wiped from every rental site. We never got answers, and we never got a call. We never even got our deposit back. But that face, the way he looked at me through the window, I still see it sometimes when I wake up at night.